welcome to the video. My intention for today is to firstly improve my skills at making these videos, and secondly to hopefully inspire and help other people who are going through a similar situation to myself. So basically what happened, I had a health check a couple of days, well no, actually it's last week, but I had the results a couple of days ago from the blood test because my sugars were raised on the finger prick test, so they recommended an A1c or A1HBC, or so. I think there's two different types, but yeah, so it's basically to measure the average sugar levels over the last 2 to 3 months. I think there's probably a slightly more technical explanation. There's something, documents refer to the stickiness of the blood or something. So yeah, obviously that's a very simplistic explanation, but yeah, obviously coming from a layman's perspective, I have looked into this subject before and read numerous books and things on the subject because I was diagnosed as pre-diabetic in 2019, and it is I say hereditary. It runs in the family on my dad's side, and so I was kind of predisposed. So I did make some changes after having those results 6 years ago, and then obviously things, well, I think they improved, and then basically I just became complacent and got back into my old habits of food addiction, particularly refined carbs, crisps, chocolate, cakes, desserts, that kind of thing. And yeah, it was a major, I realised how big an addiction it was, which I didn't want to face. I didn't want to have to give up those things that I loved. So yeah, I kind of buried my head in the sand, ignored a lot of the symptoms of the dry mouth and the fungus on the toenail, and frequent urination, sometimes a burning sensation in the urine, and oral thrush as well is another thing. So basically when I looked at the symptoms again to refresh my memory, I realised I had pretty much, probably 80% of them. So yeah, although I had an eye test recently which came back very positive, so I kind of used that as an excuse to carry on as normal, and I must be okay then. So yeah, ignoring those other symptoms, really just being like the ostrich, burying my head in the sand, not wanting to face my addiction and the reasons why I'm eating, and the instant gratification. I know it goes back a long way. It's kind of started in childhood really, and yeah, I've been well aware of the psychological and emotional aspects for a while, and I have been looking into Carl Jung's work with the shadow work, and I've done family constellation work, inner child work to some extent, although not as deep as I want to go. I feel it's kind of working on layers and things, peeling back layers, but I realised that this has been a major thing that's holding me back in many ways, because it's caused me discomfort in my back. I get a lot of muscle pain in my back, which I've never really found a long-term solution for, because obviously I'm putting that poison into my body and causing inflammation in the muscles with the sugar and the refined carbs. So yeah, I didn't want to face that and acknowledge it, but even after a couple of days of this diagnosis and making the major shift in my lifestyle, in my diet initially, and trying to incorporate a lot more exercise and healthy eating, going kind of carnivore, keto, cutting out carbs and sugar, although I'm still not clear on the fruit side of things, and maybe rice and oats, because there's a lot of contradictory information. I'm looking at different approaches, be it Ayurvedic approach and the kind of the traditional, I say traditional, but the pharmacological approach, which I'm very, I would say against, but I'm very reluctant to go down that route. I don't want to be dependent on some pharmaceutical which ultimately is not going to help in the long term, although sometimes there is a need for that in the short term, and I have considered that, although I feel that I think if I really go hardcore with this, cold turkey on the sugar and the carbs, and really up my exercise, I can, and do breath work and get more oxygen into my system, maybe sign up for some hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which I was listening to a webinar last night, which would be very beneficial, and lots of other things that I've looked at over the years, should I say. So yeah, I feel that I can get this level down and manage it myself, because hopefully I've caught it early enough and I haven't done any irreparable damage to my organs, mainly the pancreas, liver and kidneys. So yeah, I'm just getting those tested at the moment, booked a scan for the pancreas and the blood test for the liver and kidneys, and an extra A1c to confirm those previous results, and also a urine test as well. I've forgotten exactly what that measures now. Off the top of my head, I can't remember, but yeah, it's certainly another thing that they didn't actually recommend it, and the doctors, I had to request it and say, would it be useful, and they said yeah. I thought, well, why didn't they recommend it? But yeah, sometimes you do have to be proactive and ask these questions in order to get certain tests done, and yeah, build a bigger picture of what's really going on, because I don't fit the standard criteria of a type 2 diabetic, because I don't have excess weight. I'm about 80, I think it was 82 kilos, something like that, so I'm 5'11", so not particularly overweight. Cholesterol was slightly high but not alarming, only 5, which yeah, again, there's a differing opinion on that. I don't necessarily subscribe to the so-called normal range. I mean, yeah, there is some fluctuation and nuance around that depending on your type and everything, and some people say you need more cholesterol for the brain health, which makes sense, but they say that is a higher risk factor if you have that, especially with type 2 diabetes or high blood sugar. So yeah, again, there's no straightforward clear-cut answers. There's lots of different opinions on these things, so I'm kind of trying to distill down and try find the common thread and apply it to my situation using my intuition as best I can, and meditation practice and some breath work and things like that. Yeah, the lifestyle, having different shift patterns and things, is not helpful and conducive to your well-being generally anyway. We know about the circadian rhythm and how it's important to kind of live that natural cycle according to the the sun and say the moon, but yeah, more so the getting up either at sunrise or before, ideally, I guess. Again, there's different opinions about that, but I've always traditionally been a bit of a night owl. I was extreme years ago, but since I quit my alcohol and weed addiction, I have addressed that and got better, and I'm now a lot better with that. So I do get up at a semi-normal time most of the time if I'm not on a crazy shift pattern, but I've got to be more selective now over what work I take on, because stress is also another factor that can affect things, and yeah, there's so many interconnected things that you don't necessarily join those pieces of the puzzle together. Yeah, inflammation around the belly, which I've experienced with certain foods. I think my intuition tells me it is the refined flour like wheat when I have a naan bread at a curry house, or like a pastry treat, that kind of thing, which has become more of a habit recently. So yeah, I've and being having a sedentary kind of lifestyle with truck driving and not being able to access sometimes the quality food that you desire or need, should I say, and giving in to temptation and snacking on things. And yeah, I could go into a lot more detail on that, but I don't want to make this video too long. So yeah, I mean, basically, to sum up, I want to use this experience to inspire others that you can take charge of this yourself and be proactive and really do what you need to do in order to turn things around. And yeah, by making that firm decision and that commitment to yourself, to your own health and well-being, is number one priority really. So yeah, now that I've made that decision, and I'm putting this out there really also to be accountable, and yeah, for people to kind of like call me out if I do slip back into some old habits. Yeah, because ultimately I want to get rid of this food addiction and eat for nourishment rather than for pure pleasure and gluttony, you know, just often eating because I'm not even because I'm hungry, but comfort eating, which I know a lot of people can relate to. So yeah, even if you're not like massively overweight like myself, you know, it can still trigger these high blood sugars and cause all sorts of problems. And after listening to the glucose goddess, forgive me for forgetting her name, but yeah, if you Google that you'll find it. I listened to many of her podcasts and realised that, you know, there are things you can do, hacks that she's come up with, like for example eat or drinking the cider vinegar with the mother, the organic preferably. Well, yeah, not preferably, but yeah, I would say that's a must. As with most things, you know, especially dairy as well, I've been guilty of, you know, eating non-organic dairy, which, you know, yeah, again, it is sometimes controversial because some people say, oh no, there's nothing wrong with it, but you know, there's a lot of evidence to support the fact that the growth hormones and the things that they're injected with can have a detrimental effect on our health because they are passed down, and you know, the conditions in which they're kept and everything has an effect. Again, I don't want to get controversial and, you know, over that, but yeah, that's just my opinion, and I like to err on the side of caution as best I can. I'm not saying you can have to be perfect all the time, because I'm certainly not, but yeah, it's you know, once you're aware, you tend to, yeah, make those better choices, shall we say. And yeah, it's just developing that self-discipline, and yeah, I think the thing is I've ignored the symptoms because I didn't want to face like I said, the addiction, and yeah, the thought of having to give up certain things, and you know, yeah, I didn't even want to go and have the blood test. I hate having injections, you know, having blood taken, things like that, but I realised actually it's not as bad as I make it out to be. I got anxious about having a blood test and things, but yeah, when I just do it there on the spot when they offered it, I was like, actually, yeah, it's not that bad, you know, just I do tense my muscles, but actually I can do some breathing and exercises and yeah, just calm my system, and yeah, maybe even do some EFT around it to reduce that anxiousness that I get when I feel I've got to have that kind of procedure done, or any other one come to that. So yeah, there's probably a lot more I'd like to say on the subject actually, but for now I think I'm going to leave it there, and if I think of more stuff then I'm just going to add another video and make that the part 2. So thank you all for watching, and yeah, see you in the next video.